And Laura Stokes especially, who I think if I were organizing a military campaign or publishing the Encyclopedia Britannica or some other large and logistically complicated process, I would call on Laura or pass things over really to Laura to take care of while I went somewhere else. Because the amount of planning and effort that everyone at Brown has put into organizing this meeting has been really fantastic, and I can't thank them enough for what they've done to make this meeting successful. So in addition to Laura, I also need to thank Sheila, who put together our wonderful list of events in the area, Nancy, Catherine, who helped put together the restaurant list, Patrick Hutchinson, Ned Quist, whom you all know and will be hearing from in just a moment, Pat Putney, Ginny Twomey, Barbara Schultz, Harriet Kamasi, and anyone else who helped with this meeting whose name I don't happen to have. My thanks go out to all of you.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to see how many people showed up for this meeting, especially considering the parking issues that Laura so carefully enumerated.
And the cranes blocking all the streets.
The cranes, yes. Well, I'm going to get to those in a minute. First of all, let me express Harriet Hamasi's apologies for not being here this morning. She wanted to be here to welcome you. But if I know Harriet, she will probably pop in at some point during the day. So if a little head sticks through the back door there, welcome her. She's very much still considers herself a music librarian at heart, and that's one of the things we're very proud of at Brown, is that we have music librarians all over the place. Harriet used to be music librarian, as you may know, at Rutgers. Myself, I was music librarian at Peabody and then here at Brown. Ann Caldwell, who was here earlier, I don't know if Ann is still here, was a music cataloger at one time. So we have music librarians scattered in various places throughout the library. So we maintain control here. Brown has 5 libraries. You're in the largest of them right now. 2 of them, unfortunately, are characterized by what is known as 20th century brutalist architecture. And the Rock is one. The other one is the Science Library, which you will pass if you take a tour of Orwig, because you sort of can't miss it if you're headed that way. Right next door to us is one of the libraries that used to be the main library, the John Hay Library, which is now our Special Collections Library. And the other library, Orwig, of course, you will see at some point today. And the other library that's on campus, but is not part of the university system, is the John Carter Brown Library, which you will probably also pass on your way to Orwig. So you'll get to see them all from a distance. Now, part of the thing that's going on at Brown right now is, like any academic library, we're in the midst of undergoing lots of changes, not only intellectual and sort of mission changes, but also physical ones. And the physical ones are very apparent from the cranes that Ricky pointed out, which are now becoming sort of Brown's official bird, as it were. They're in the midst of installing windows on the John Hay Library, which is undergoing a major renovation. The John Hay is just over 100 years old and was built as Brown's main library following, and there's another one you can see when you go out the front door. If you look at the Carey Tower out there, which is that big bell tower, right behind it is a rather Gothic-looking brick building, which is Robinson Hall, now home of economics, which was at one time the University Library also, going all the way back to the time when the University Library was actually in Dr. Manning's desk. So now we have 5 libraries, many of which are undergoing renovation. The John Hay will be finished this fall, and we hope that you will all come back and visit again when it's done, because it's going to be magnificent. One of the things they're doing there is to turn the main reading room back to its original splendor. Over the years, it had been broken up for various purposes, but it's basically now becoming the original main reading room. You'll notice nowhere in the Rock is there one of those glorious reading rooms that you like to see in big libraries. There is one next door. So do come back and see that. Other changes that are going on this summer, the reading room out there will be totally renovated. It used to be a reference collection and reference desk and all of that. We don't have a reference desk anymore. I suspect we're not the only ones where that is true. So that room is being totally renovated, and it will become a much more welcoming study space. We're actually reducing the number of computers out there, which is something we think it's time to do. And instead of having lots of fixed PCs everywhere, we're going to have laptops that can be borrowed at the desk for people who don't choose to drag their own around. Although we're finding that more and more students are either having tablets or laptops of their own, so it's less necessary to have all those computers everywhere. Other things that are going on in the library renovation-wise is this room right next to you, which is now the Serials Reading Room, will be transformed into something we're now calling a digital studio, which will become the home for the Center for Digital Scholarship, which is a joint group right now that is between digital technologies and my department, which is called Research and Outreach Services. And it's kind of the interesting part of the library. It's the forward-looking service part of the library, and you'll be hearing from two of our members of CDS right after I'm finished talking about OMEKA, if I'm not mistaken. They're two of a team of 4 people which make up our digital curation group or data curation group. The other person we have is a GIS specialist, and starting next Tuesday, we will now have our own science data specialist who's coming to us from UMass Worcester. We're very excited about that. So that group will be working out of this space, which will probably be renovated in the next year or so, but not before next summer, I'd say at the earliest. So there's lots of stuff going on around here. Intellectually, obviously, we're changing from a library that was basically a warehouse for books into a place where we'd like to think things are happening. Whether those things are faculty research projects, student research projects, or just new things, lectures. This room gets used a lot for classes. It gets used a lot for lectures, and some amazing things that faculty are doing here. They're coming now to the library to talk about it, which is, I think, what the library should always have been, which was the intellectual hub of the university. We'd like to think we're doing that again, but in a slightly different way. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for being here, and you will see me again up in front probably sometime around 4 o'clock. Actually, not me, it's my evil twin Skippy who will be playing in a contribution.
Will be talking to us about OMEKA, online exhibits for music librarians, a topic which and I think many of us are interested to learn more, a topic and program I think many of us are interested to learn more about. So please welcome them, and thank you.
Hello. Joys of digital technology as we switch over. So I'm delighted to be here and be part of this great meeting, and also because before I came to Brown, I used to tell people that my favorite job was the summer I spent at the archives of the New York Philharmonic. So I am very happy to be back among so many music librarians. So the cool thing about this wall is actually that you can, I'm on, over there. Yeah. Is you can do that. Yes. And so actually one of the reasons that, yeah, the blaze of digital knowledge that, yeah, not really. But so one of the things that this room gets used for, let me make sure that my computer doesn't embarrass me by turning off at inappropriate moments. But is we can have up to 12 screens at once, and we can have 14 people plugged in, and there's a little digital switcher over here that was what Ellie was playing with, so that we can actually do that.
And if you look at the floor underneath your feet, you'll see the places where the various
Yes, if you see plates,
would be making a class.
we've closed all of them so that no one trips, but there are taps in the floor and taps in the walls, and they're all HDMI. So, we are going to be talking to you about OMEKA, a software that was developed by the Center for History and New Media at George Mason with originally funding from the IMLS. So in fact, for those of you who have heard about OMEKA, who maybe got a free OMEKA account at some point or saw an OMEKA exhibit and started to play around with it and then decided you didn't quite understand what was going on and, and got out again. Once you see why OMEKA is organized the way that it is, it starts to make a lot of sense to librarians and archivists, and it makes sense to librarians and archivists a lot faster than it does to historians, because it's actually based on library cataloging practices. So when I work with historians, I have to explain to them what Dublin Core is. This is going to be a much shorter presentation. You can get to the fun stuff a lot faster. But just so we know, as we're up here, just with a couple quick questions, show of hands. How many of you, like Nancy, have curated a physical exhibit? Okay. How many of you have done a digital exhibit of some form or another? Okay, great. And has anyone done an exhibit in OMEKA before? Okay, a couple people. So you can point things out. Please call out as I'm talking. This doesn't have to be a one-way transfer, just because we never have a podium, so I'm feeling strangely knowledgeable. But this does not have to be a one-way transfer. So if you have experience, please call out. If you have questions, if we're going too fast, just let us know. And then how many people, even if you haven't used OMEKA, have used a WordPress-like blog, either your own or a group blog before, where you've seen a kind of dashboard you can type into text? Okay, great. Cool. So those of you who have an account, have a laptop, have a tablet, feel free to click and point and follow along. Those of you who don't, just let it wash over you. So the first thing I want to show you is the omeka.org site, which is very easy to find, omeka.org. And this is the full OMEKA, the big one. For those of you who are familiar with WordPress, you may know that there is the wordpress.org site, and then there's wordpress.com, where you can sign up for a free blog, and there is a limited, you don't have as many themes, you don't have as many plugins, but you don't need a server. So in a similar way, there's omeka.org, which you can install and mess with the code as much as you want, hire a developer, spend a lot of money, get a gorgeous site. There's also omeka.net, which you can get to from the omeka.org site. It says no server, try omeka.net, which is very similar to wordpress.com. So it's a similar, right. So there are two orgs, a .com and a .net, but it's the same kind of division. Even if you're just going to use omeka.net, which is what I'm going to show you right now, because you can do this tomorrow, if you want, on a Saturday. You can do it on Monday, depending on how committed you are, really. You don't need a server, you don't need a programmer, you don't need a sysadmin, you just need something that connects to the internet. But the bulk of the documentation for OMEKA is based around omeka.org. Omeka.net has its own set of documentation. I'll show you that in a moment. But it's a little more slimmed down. And this is the part that you really care about, the getting started with project planning, which is as true for OMEKA as it really is for anything else. And it's a series of ways of thinking about exhibits. So for those of you who've never done an exhibit before, or for those of you who've never done a digital exhibit before, here's some ideas about how to think about gathering your materials, how you're going to plan out your site, how you're going to think about it. So that's enough about omeka.org. They also have wonderful forums, and you can need to log in, get an account, but then you can ask questions, and the developers, Patrick Murray-John and his friends, hang out on the forums. So actually, if you ask a question on the support forums for OMEKA, it's a pretty good chance that one of the people who responds to you is one of the people who is responsible for maintaining the code base. So it's a very active, there's a lot of community, so there's community input as well, but the developers keep an eye on it. It's part of their job description, actually, is to watch the support forum. So let us take a look first at what OMEKA can do for you. And there's a nice link here called Showcase, and you can go look at a bunch of stuff. Some of these have been highly customized, so it's always the easiest thing to find. So you may see things that you actually can't do without hiring your own programmer, but I'm going to look
And if it doesn't, OMEKA has a characteristic look. If it doesn't, if it says it's OMEKA and it doesn't look like OMEKA, someone spent
Money.
So,
Yeah.
so you can do that, but it's not.
Not to start out on a downer, but this is actually a really great site, and it's an early OMEKA, and it's not terribly customized. And it's a very powerful site in terms of the software, also in terms of the topics, obviously. But the reason that I wanted to show it, the reason I picked it, not just because I like it, but because they have very good integration of video. So there's a lot. So the point is that in OMEKA, it's not just images. There's sound. I'm going to talk over them now. But you can integrate video, you can integrate audio. So it's not just for still images. And that's why I wanted to show you this. So when you look at an OMEKA site, you have a main page, which will have a little bit of text over here, and then you'll have things called, depending on the theme you choose, so just like WordPress, OMEKA can be themed, and there are a lot of pre-created themes that you can use, and it's also possible to write your own or configure your own. It's easier to configure or write your own. You can't write your own for omeka.net. There are some things you can change automatically in the browser, like I would prefer it to be green and yellow, then pink and purple, which is always a good idea. And a few like color tweaks, but you can theme it. So this is all a pre-done theme, and there's actually a theme that's based on this website. So you have something called exhibits, and you have something called items, and items are really, really important. The item is the heart of OMEKA. OMEKA is really a collection of items. That's what it is. And you may notice, look vaguely familiar, vaguely like Dublin Core? Every item can be cataloged with Dublin Core fields. And it's so nice to talk to librarians, because I do this for historians and they go, Dublin, Ireland? Should it be in Gaelic? So it's an item, it's a thing. So items can be still images, they can be audio, they can be video. They can be PDFs that you can show in a Google Docs reader. There's a plugin for that. There are, and they have cataloging. So,
By the way, they can also be URLs.
Yes.
That's actually fairly useful.
yeah, so you can also link out to something, which is really important when we get to omeka.net, because the free version of omeka.net comes with 50 megabytes of storage. And if you want more storage than that, you have to pay. So you could have a free exhibit with a couple of clips of audio, but video is right out. Which is understandable. I think it's fair for CH&M to offer a service with a small amount of hosts, but then they'll pay to hold more of your stuff. I think it's so for free, no, jumping ahead, but for a free account on omeka.net, you get 500 megabytes and one site. And then if you get the next up is, I think, 2 sites and 4 gig. And it can go up, and you can get a site license that's up to unlimited sites and like 25 gig, and if you need more than that, then they're happy to talk to you and work something out. It's all laid out quite nicely on their website for omeka.net. But this is an item. And the other thing about items is that they don't have to just be one file. So an item is a conceptual thing. So if you have a book, right, you could have, you could have the front and the back, the front cover, the inside flap, the really pretty image that you're actually interested in, and all those files can be associated with one item. So it's not one file, one item. Making sense? Mm-hmm. I love librarians. Okay. So these are items. Items.
And by the way, your Dublin Core can be as simple or as complicated as you want. I mean, we'll look at some of that later,
Yeah.
but you're looking at a relatively simple description here.
Right. And the other,
Doesn't have to be
yeah.
simple.
It doesn't have to be this simple. You do have a full Dublin Core available when we go into the dashboard. And you'll see that, but you can also say when you go to make your item publicly available, you can click a nice little button that says, if nothing's in this field, don't show it. So it's not just like, oh, long empty catalog record. So the other thing is that OMEKA was, as I said, there was that IMLS grant. OMEKA was originally designed for small libraries, historical societies, house museums, who don't have an institutional repository of their own, which means that OMEKA wants to hold your stuff. So you have to upload your materials, which is why URLs are great, so you can link out to a pre-existing repository. Or you might just decide, if it's a small thing, to just have it in 2 places, but you may do lighter cataloging because you've already cataloged the heck out of the thing the first time, and you don't need to do it again. But for those of you who might be from smaller institutions where you don't have an institutional repository, this can be a way to get some of your stuff cataloged and available online. Yes?
On the Dublin core, are you doing it for the original object or for the digital object or both?
They leave that up to you.
Okay.
It's your choice. And you'll see in the dashboard when we get to that. But anyway,
I
so
think what you will see though is if this is your primary repository, probably you're cataloging the object.
Right.
I mean, it kind of depends what else you've got. If you've got a really good catalog already, probably you just export what you need for finding and sorting, or for like a public.
Mhm.
And you wouldn't spend a lot of time doing real cataloging, but.
Well, yeah, of course. I was just wondering. If
They don't care.
OMEKA doesn't make that decision for you, it's up to you.
Okay.
So one of the things you'll want to do is if you're working on a group project, you'll want to set some guidelines for this is how we're going to use Dublin Core in OMEKA. And it may be different from how you use whatever main, whether you use Dublin Core in your institution generally, or whether you use something more specific. You know, those same guidelines of, and this is what the creator field means this time, and this is what, you know, the object type means this time. So you have items, and the great thing is that items get grouped into exhibits. And exhibits are websites with pre-existing themes. We were here already. They have a front page that we already saw, and then they have other pages. And you have items and different layouts. So page 2, and then we have more items, and at any point you can click from the page into the item and back again. And so this is, you know, this is pretty, that's it. But it's pretty nice, you know. So this is a full-on OMEKA. So now I'm going to show you an omeka.net, which is both probably more, I don't want to say plausible, but it's easier to get set up, and also with a much more appropriate theme. So this is the Appalachian Dulcimer Archive, which Ellie found yesterday. And it's really cool because it's from Vanderbilt University, and it is their collection of dulcimers that they have put online. And you can see all the items, and so these are all of their dulcimers. And yeah, exactly. So it's way too much fun. But the reason, though, the other thing, you can geolocate. So you can, when you go to create an item, you can put in a location, and it'll show a map. So this is apparently where this particular dulcimer came from. There are these people, as is only right and true, love their dulcimers. So the other thing, though, that you can do is there's a browse option. So this instance of OMEKA doesn't actually have exhibits. It just has pages for individual dulcimers. So you don't have to build exhibits. You can just have simple pages, like in WordPress where you have an about page. You can just have a basic page, and you can write a little essay about your dulcimer. You can also tag things. So along with your specific, hierarchies, you can also have taxonomies. And so here are a bunch of things that are, so you can say, I want to see all of the dulcimers that have a plain fretboard. And here they are. Maybe later I will ask. Maybe someone wants to tell me what that means. The other thing, though, that they did that was very cool is they found this guy. And what, so they did this, and they also did, why can't I find it? There are audio recordings, here we go. So what they have is, as an image, and I'll put the sound way back up, they invited a person to come and play their dulcimers. And it deserves a better speaker than my Mac, but if you want to play with it later. So the other thing, though, is that you can link the items together. You can create relations, so you can hear the music, and then you can go meet the dulcimer. So this is a really clever use of OMEKA that doesn't even use exhibits, but just has items. And so there are audio file items, and there are image items, and you notice how this particular item, which is the dulcimer number 1, has multiple images associated with it. Yeah, Nancy.
You mentioned that you could have a URL showing. What does this, since you're on it, happen to have one of those pages, and what displays, and how does that kind of relate to what's
this site doesn't use that. What usually